Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to Brave Animals for more real-life stories where heroic canine dogs change lives, expose secrets, and protect the ones who can't protect themselves. These incredible dogs are more than pets. They're silent heroes, and their stories deserve to be told. It was supposed to be a normal Friday morning. Kids in room 204 were buzzing with energy, their tiny feet tapping under desks and their hands drumming on pencil cases as the big moment arrived. Miss Bennett's Candy Friday. But just as the first student reached for a brightly wrapped caramel, the canine dog standing at the classroom door let out a bark so sharp it made 3 kids drop their candy and clutch their ears. Nova was not a dog who barked without a reason. Officer Grant knew this. He'd been with Nova for nearly 4 years now, and through drug busts, missing children, and more than a few attempted airport smuggling cases, she had never once given a false signal. But this was a classroom. A room full of crayons, spelling tests, and kindergarten artwork pinned on corkboards. The last place you'd expect a full tactical K-9 unit to go off like someone just yelled bomb. Officer Grant held the leash tighter as Nova's barks grew louder. Her teeth bared, her ears up, her eyes locked straight on the tote bag beside Miss Bennett's desk. The teacher froze mid-sentence, a small paper cup of jelly beans still in her hand. Is everything all right? She asked, eyes darting, between the growling dog and the children who were now watching like something out of a movie. I don't think so, Grant said quietly, taking one careful step into the classroom. The principal had invited him and Nova for the school's annual Career Day presentation. Grant had done this a dozen times before. Shake a few hands, let the kids pet Nova, explain how K-9 units worked. Easy stuff. Until now. Ma'am, I need you to step back from your desk, please, Grant said, his voice calm but firm. Miss Bennett blinked, clearly confused. Why? Is she afraid of something? Nova's trained to detect narcotics, accelerants, certain chemicals. When she reacts like this, it's because something triggered her. Officer Grant knelt beside Nova, who was now clawing at the floor next to the bag. She was no longer barking, but whining, low, insistent, and urgent. Please, he said. Again, this time to both the teacher and the students. Everyone step back. Just a little. Miss Bennett hesitated. Then, with a slightly nervous laugh, she said, "Oh my gosh, is it the candy? I promise I didn't spike it. It's just regular store stuff." But as she moved toward the tote to show him, Nova suddenly lunged forward, snapping her jaws an inch from the strap. Grant jerked her leash back in time, but the message was clear. Nova wasn't guessing. Nova was warning. That was when little Emily raised her hand. She was sitting in the back, her purple hoodie too big for her thin frame. Quiet, invisible in most group settings. But now, every eye turned to her. I got sick last week, she said softly. After Candy Day. Grant turned to her. What kind of sick? My tummy. Real bad. I threw up all night. I told the nurse, but she just gave me a Sprite. Miss Bennett's smile froze on her face. It happens sometimes, the teacher said quickly. Some kids don't tolerate sugar well. Nova started barking again, louder this time. Grant stood. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I'm going to need to check your bag. That's ridiculous, Miss Bennett snapped, grabbing it off the desk and clutching it to her chest. You're scaring the children. That's not my dog barking for no reason, Grant said. He motioned toward the hallway, where 2 other officers had just arrived for the assembly. One of them stepped in, gently herding the kids out of the classroom. Miss Bennett's hands tightened around the bag. I said no, she hissed. Nova growled low, crouched like a coiled spring. It was then that Grant saw it, the flicker of panic. Not confusion, not concern. Real fear. He signaled to the officers. Take the children to the gym, he said quietly. And someone call the narcotics unit. We've got a situation. Miss Bennett's face turned pale. This is a misunderstanding, she whispered. But Grant had seen too many of those. Once the room was cleared, the search began. Miss Bennett stood silently, her back against the bookshelf, as Officer Grant opened her tote bag. He didn't even need to dig deep. The smell hit him first. a sharp synthetic sting. Beneath a colorful cloth pencil case and several rolls of Smarties was a plastic container labeled sugar-free peppermints. Inside weren't mints. Inside were blister packs, half-used. No prescription labels. He opened another pocket. Tiny glass vials. 2 were empty, and then, tucked in a zipper sleeve, was a small pouch of white powder in a child's candy wrapper. Grant didn't say anything. He just looked at her. Miss Bennet sank to the floor. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she whispered. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." By the time the detectives arrived, Nova had calmed down, lying flat near Emily's desk, head on her paws. Emily watched her from the doorway of the gym, eyes wide but not afraid. She was the only one who had spoken up, and maybe that saved more than just her. The school day ended early. Within an hour of the incident, parents were lined, up outside the elementary school, faces tense with fear and confusion. Some whispered rumors. Others demanded answers. Most didn't know what was going on beyond the fact that a police dog barked at a teacher, and now that teacher was gone. Inside, the gymnasium, the children sat in lines, coloring sheets handed out by overwhelmed aides and substitute staff. The school counselor paced between them, offering smiles and juice boxes. Emily sat alone. Her drawing didn't have color, just thick lines and black crayon. A girl, a dog, and something that looked like a tornado around them. She pressed harder, with each stroke until the crayon broke in half. She didn't flinch. Across campus, Officer Grant was finishing his statement. 2 narcotics officers had taken custody of Miss Bennet and her bag. She was being processed downtown. Charges were pending based on chemical analysis and distribution intent, but Grant's mind wasn't on the arrest. It was on Emily. "Can I speak to the girl again?" he asked the principal. The woman hesitated. "Officer, she's just a child. I don't think she understands what she said. And her parents aren't here yet." "I'm not interrogating her," Grant replied. "I just want to talk." The principal relented and led him back to the gym. The noise died a little when he entered. Kids still recognized a uniform, but Emily didn't even look up. He walked over slowly and sat down on the floor, leaving a respectful space between them. Nova lay beside him, tail wagging softly. "Hi, Emily," he said. She nodded, still focused on the paper in front of her. "You draw really well." She gave a small shrug. "I messed up the dog's nose. I think it looks just like Nova," he said. At that, she glanced up. "She's really smart." "Yeah," Grant smiled. "She is. And she liked you. That's there. Nova doesn't usually let kids touch her, but she let you." Emily's eyes dropped. "I don't think the candy was normal." He nodded. "You said you got sick last week. Did Miss Bennet give you candy then too?" "Uh-huh," Emily said. "She always says special treat for my quiet ones. She never gives it to kids who yell or run." "Did anyone else get sick?" She shook her head. "Just me, I think." Grant kept his voice calm. "Emily, I need to ask you something kind of strange, okay?" She looked at him directly now. "Okay. Has Miss Bennet ever told you not to talk about the candy?" Emily didn't answer right away. Her fingers twisted, the corner of the paper. Then she said, "She said I was her favorite. She said sometimes she gives special treats only to the good girls, that I shouldn't tell or they might get jealous." Grant's jaw clenched. "Did the candy look the same every time?" "No," Emily said. "Sometimes they were red squares. Sometimes they were kind of grainy. Once it tasted like metal." He looked toward the school nurse's office through the open door. "Did anyone ever check on you when you felt sick?" Emily shook her head again. "They just called my mom, but she works nights. She didn't come." Nova nudged Emily's knee with her nose. The girl finally smiled. Grant rose to his feet. "Thank you, Emily. You're very brave." She didn't say anything, but the way her shoulders relaxed told him everything. Back outside, Grant called into the precinct. "I think we've got more than drug possession here," he said. Start checking into her teaching record, and someone needs to talk to child services. He was about to leave when Nova suddenly froze. Her body tensed. Her ears stiffened. She turned toward the parking lot. Grant followed her gaze. There was a man leaning against a dark sedan. Sunglasses, hoodie, hands in his pockets. Nothing technically suspicious, but something felt wrong. Nova growled low. Grant narrowed his eyes. Stay here, he told the principal. Keep the kids inside. He approached the man slowly. Afternoon, Grant said. The man didn't answer. You here to pick up a student? Still no response. Nova barked once, sharp and loud. That got the man's attention. He looked at Nova, then back at Grant, and suddenly bolted. Hey! Grant shouted, taking off after him. Nova didn't wait. Her leash slipped from Grant's hand as she sprinted after the man, cutting across the grass like a missile. The man made it 20 feet before he tripped over the curb. Nova was on him before he could scramble up, pinning him to the ground with a snarl that made the parking lot go silent. Grant caught up seconds later, cuffs ready. What's in your pockets? He asked. Turned out the man wasn't just some creeper. He was listed as a known associate of a woman already under investigation for smuggling prescription drugs into schools via special candy packages. Miss Bennett was not working alone, and, thanks to Nova, now they knew. Back inside, Emily watched from the gym windows as the man was taken away. Nobody told her anything, but she saw the way Officer Grant gave her a thumbs up, and how Nova barked once, softly, as if to say, Good job, kid. That night, Grant sat in the squad room finishing his report. The evidence had been logged. Miss Bennett's background was already under review. Turns out she had bounced between schools, always leaving after a year, always citing health reasons. And now a network of similar cases across 3 states was being tied together. At the center of it all was one teacher, one tote bag, and one little girl who dared to raise her hand. Nova lay beside Grant's desk, her tail twitching, in her sleep. He looked down at her and whispered, You did good, girl. She didn't open her eyes. Just gave a soft thump of her tail, and across town a girl named Emily finally slept without a stomachache. Saturday morning came quiet. No alarms, no bells, no backpacks slung over shoulders. But inside the police station, the hum of activity never stopped. Officer Grant sat in the corner of the small conference room sipping lukewarm coffee, the stale kind from the break room machine. Nova rested under the table, her head on her front paws, eyes open but calm. Across from him sat Agent Carla Reyes from the state task force. She had flown in late last night after the connection between Miss Bennett and several flagged schools became too strong to ignore. She pushed a thin folder toward him. We've confirmed 3 other schools, she said. All elementary, all with candy reward incidents. Same symptoms in kids, same pattern. Sudden teacher relocation before parents raised formal complaints. Grant opened the folder. Photos. Of different women. Same sweet smile, same tote bag in most of the images. One was wearing a sunflower pin exactly like Miss Bennett's. They rotate identities, Reyes said. Slight changes in names. Fake resumes. And because they target districts short on staff, they're rarely questioned. Grant felt a chill. That had nothing to do with the air conditioning. They know the system too well, he muttered. Reyes nodded. They rely on kids not speaking up, parents blaming candy or stomach bugs, teachers who fly under the radar. Grant tapped the first goose. So what now? We follow the supply. The man Nova caught yesterday had coded labels on him. Tracked back to a warehouse in Ohio. Raided it this morning. Found boxes of educational materials loaded with designer stimulants. Grant exhaled slowly. But here's where it gets worse, Reyes said, lowering her voice. Inside Miss Bennett's bag we found a list, hidden behind the fabric lining. Handwritten, names, dates, and school codes. Grant frowned. Like a record? No. Like a target list. He looked at her sharply. Reyes continued. One of the names was Emily Grayson. Silence fell between them. Nova's ears perked slightly. Grant sat back in his chair. She's just a child. Reyes nodded. But they must have noticed something about her. Maybe her reaction to the drugs. Maybe she was more valuable to them somehow. We don't know yet. Do her parents know? Her mom's on her way. Lives alone, works nights, no father listed. Grant stood. I want to be the one to talk to her. 10 minutes later, Grant was in the visitation room where Emily sat beside her mother, a tired-looking woman in her early 30s named Leah Grayson. She wore scrubs, her hair pulled into a rushed bun, eyes red from a sleepless night. I don't understand what's happening, Leah said, her voice tight. Why my daughter? Why would a teacher do this? Grant sat across from them. Nova curled beside Emily, who leaned into the dog like she was the only thing stable in the room. We're not completely sure yet, Grant said gently. But your daughter was brave. She spoke up when it mattered. Emily didn't look up. Leah reached out, brushing hair from her daughter's face. Why didn't you tell me, baby? Emily's voice was small. You were always tired, and you said not to bother you with school stuff unless it was an emergency. Leah froze. Grant gave her a second. He knew the look on her face, the guilt, the sudden tidal wave of what-ifs. I wasn't trying to ignore you, Leah whispered. I was just trying to survive. Grant stayed quiet. Some things didn't need an officer's voice. Just room. Reyes entered the room briefly and handed Grant a note. It was a scanned copy of a sticky note from the warehouse raid. On it was a drawing of a little girl with long hair and glasses. Below it, test well, quiet, keep close, maybe, Florida next. Grant didn't show it to Leah, not yet, but inside a fire lit up in his chest. He stood and motioned for Leah to follow him outside the room for a minute. You need to know this, he said. There's a possibility your daughter was being watched, selected. I don't want to alarm you, but it's serious. Leah's hands trembled. Watched for what? Grant didn't sugarcoat it. Some of these people have ties to underground trials of controlled substances. They're experimenting, using schools as blind spots. Your daughter might have responded differently than others. They took note. Leah's mouth dropped open. Are you saying they were testing drugs on my child? Grant met her eyes. That's exactly what I'm saying. She gripped the wall for balance. I want to keep her safe, she said quickly. I'll quit my job. I'll pull her out of school, whatever it takes. We'll help you, Grant assured her. But I need one more thing. Has anyone contacted you in the last few weeks? Anyone you didn't know asking about your daughter? Leah thought for a second, then nodded slowly. There was a woman, she said. Called herself Miss Dina. Said she was from a gifted program. Wanted to observe Emily during reading time. But I never signed anything. Grant's gut dropped. That name wasn't on any district record. Nova barked softly from inside the room. Grant turned to Reyes down the hall. We've got another lead. That afternoon, Grant and Reyes visited the address Miss Dina had given Leah. It wasn't a house. It was a rented office unit inside a strip mall, the kind usually filled with tax services and karate studios. Inside were bookshelves filled with children's novels, stuffed animals, and motivational posters. No kids, no teachers, just a man behind a desk who looked way too nervous to be working in child development. Reyes stepped forward. Federal agents. Where's Dina? The man's face went pale. She left this morning, said she had to get to Jacksonville. Something about being hot. They were too late. But before leaving, Grant spotted something on the corner of the man's desk. A file folder half covered by a notebook. He opened it. Inside were photos, dozens of them, schoolyards, children playing, names scribbled on the back. Emily's face appeared twice. Nova growled, and Grant knew it wasn't over. Not yet. The photos didn't lie. They were printed in color on cheap glossy paper, some with timestamps, others labeled with names and school codes. Almost all showed children on school grounds, snapped from distances where no photographer had any business being. Playgrounds, car lines, cafeteria windows. It looked less like a research project and more like a predator's scrapbook. Emily's Photo had been printed twice. One showed her sitting on a bench alone during recess, legs tucked under her, her eyes downcast. The other showed her in a reading circle next to Miss Bennet. Grant stared at them in silence. His jaw clenched tight enough to make his temple throb. These people aren't just experimenting, he muttered to Agent Reyes. They're targeting, like merchandise. Reyes stood beside him, flipping through a logbook they had recovered from the fake, gifted education office in the strip mall. These aren't random notes. Look at the columns. There's a rating system. Behavior, obedience, response time. Grant shook his head. I've seen cartel logs with less structure. Reyes looked up. This isn't just about one teacher. Anymore. We're sitting on a trafficking operation disguised as academic outreach. And we've already tipped one of them off, Grant said. Dina's on the move. She knew we were coming. They stepped outside. Florida humidity hit like a wave. Do we have her plate? Grant asked. Reyes nodded. We pinged the sedan outside the building, rental out of Tampa. Under a fake ID, of course, but the vehicle's tracked. Last known heading north toward Jacksonville. I'll take Nova. And go now, Grant said. Reyes raised an eyebrow. You sure you want in the field for this part? Grant opened the back door of the cruiser where Nova was already sitting upright, ears forward, as if she had been listening the whole time. She's the reason we're even here, he said. And that little girl's still in danger. The, ride up I-95 took 3 hours. The silence in the car wasn't awkward. Nova barely moved, her gaze fixed out the window, alert but calm. She always seemed to know when the mission wasn't just routine. They arrived in Jacksonville just after sundown. The GPS pinged the rental car in a motel lot on the outskirts of town. Cheap place, week-to-week rooms, the kind of place people stayed when they didn't want to be remembered. Grant pulled up across the street, killed the engine, and waited. He called Reyes. She's here. Car's parked. Room 17. Wait for backup, Reyes replied. But Grant was watching something already unfold. A woman, mid-30s, short red hair, thin build, stepped out of room 17 holding a duffel bag. She wasn't rushing, but she wasn't relaxed either. Her eyes darted around before she walked briskly toward the vending machine near the office. Nova gave a low growl. That's her, Grant said. He grabbed Nova's lead and stepped out of the vehicle. Quiet. Focused. The woman turned just as he reached the edge of the lot, ma'am, Grant said, his tone casual but firm. Can I speak with you a moment? Her eyes flicked toward the cruiser, then the dog, then the side alley. She dropped the bag and ran. Nova didn't need a command. She bolted, perfectly trained, weaving around a pickup truck and cutting off. The woman's escape. By the time Grant rounded the corner, Nova had the suspect on the ground, one paw pinning her shoulder, a warning bark in her throat but not biting. Just holding. Grant moved in and cuffed her. You really picked the wrong state to run, he muttered. The woman didn't speak. At the station, under interrogation, she finally cracked. Her real name was Tasha Dillon. She wasn't a teacher. She wasn't in education at all. She was an observer trained to identify kids who were docile and underprotected. Her job was to blend in, build trust, and report data to the central group. How many of you are there? Reyes asked. Tasha hesitated. Then, more than you'll stop. What do they want with the kids? Grant asked. Her voice was flat. The ones who don't fight back are easier to mold. Grant leaned forward. Mold into what? She shrugged. Whatever the buyer wants. That was all he could stomach. He stepped out. He found Nova in the hallway, resting near the soda machine. He knelt beside her and whispered, We've only scratched the surface, haven't we? She gave a soft bark. The next morning, Emily was eating pancakes for the first time in days. Her mother had taken leave from work. Grant stopped by the Grayson's apartment with Nova. Emily ran straight to the dog, wrapping her arms around her neck. You found the lady, didn't you? She asked. Grant nodded. Yeah, she won't be near any schools again. Good, Emily said simply. Leah poured him coffee. I don't know how to thank you. Just keep talking to your daughter, Grant said. Leah glanced down. I'm trying. They sat on the porch for a while. Emily played tug-of-war with Nova in the yard, the first time she had laughed in weeks. Then Leah asked, "What happens now?" "We're going after the rest," Grant said. "But I think your daughter might have helped save more than just herself." The task force headquarters, new files poured in. Photos, names, district records. They were putting together a map everywhere this network had touched. Grant posted Emily's photo on the board, not as a victim, but as a reminder. She had been one of the few who noticed something was wrong and had the courage to speak. Nova's service vest hung beside the photo. This case wasn't over, but now they had a direction, and this time, the K-9 unit wasn't just responding. They were hunting. Sunday morning began with a knock. Officer Grant stood outside the front door of the Grayson apartment, holding a small file folder in one hand and Nova's leash in the other. He looked tired, not physically, but in that quiet mental way that builds up when you've seen too much too fast. Leah Grayson opened the door in her robe. She gave him a nervous look. "Is it Emily?" she asked. "She's fine," Grant said, quickly. "Still sleeping?" Leah nodded and stepped aside to let him in. Nova walked in silently, her nails tapping on the laminate floor as she moved toward Emily's bedroom and laid down beside the door. "She's been sleeping better," Leah said softly. "She didn't used to sleep through the night. Not before all this." Grant smiled. "She's safe now. That helps more than anything." He handed Leah the folder. "What's this?" she asked. "It's what we found in the warehouse. Photos, notes, profiles," Grant said. "Emily was in there twice, but not just her. 2 other girls from the school too, kids we didn't even know were being targeted." Leah flipped through the papers, her eyes growing wider. She stopped on one picture. "Wait, I know this girl. That's Amari. She's in Emily's class." "She's one of the quiet ones too," Grant said. "Her mom works double shifts, doesn't pick her up until after 6 most nights." Leah swallowed hard. "So it wasn't just Emily?" "No, and I don't think it was ever just Miss Bennett either." Leah put the folder down. "So what are you doing now?" "We're expanding the task force," Grant said. "The FBI's moving in. This has crossed state lines and it's bigger than we thought. They're calling it Project Chalk Dust." "Why that name?" "Because this group hides in plain sight," Grant said. "In classrooms, behind report cards, inside kids' backpacks." Nova barked once, quiet but alert. She was staring at the door again. A moment later, there was another knock. Grant opened it to find Agent Reyes holding a tablet and her usual, no-nonsense expression. "We've got something," she said without preamble. Grant stepped outside with her. Reyes pulled up a video feed. "Remember that motel Dina used? The one in Jacksonville?" "Yeah. We went back and pulled the security footage from the last 3 months. This face popped up a few times." She tapped the screen. A blurry image sharpened into a man, in a gray hoodie and black ball cap, walking toward room 19 with what looked like a lunch cooler. "Who is he?" "No confirmed ID yet," Reyes said. But facial recognition hit on a tech consultant who used to work for a pharmaceutical startup, out of Atlanta. Got fired 2 years ago. Went off-grid. Name's Evan Rhodes. Grant raised an eyebrow. "Any idea why he'd be delivering coolers?" "Whatever's in them, it's not lunch. The one we found yesterday tested positive for trace levels of methylphenidate, caffeine anhydrous, and a synthetic nootropic." Grant didn't need a lab degree to get the point. "They're trying to build super students," he said. Reyes nodded. "At least that's what they're selling." Nova barked again. This time it wasn't random. She was facing the hallway inside the apartment complex. Her body stiffened, nose to the air. "What is it, girl?" Grant asked. She moved toward the window. Grant followed. Outside, parked halfway down the lot, was a blue delivery van. No markings. "Windows tinted too dark for a standard commercial vehicle," Nova growled. Grant walked out to the edge of the complex sidewalk, eyes locked on the van. The engine was off, no one inside, or so it seemed. Reyes joined him. "You think it's him?" "Too convenient," Grant said. "Too quiet." He motioned toward the car parked behind it. "Let's ask." They approached slowly, No sudden moves. Grant knocked on the driver's side window. No answer. He circled the back while Reyes stayed up front. The van's rear doors were shut but unlocked. He opened them. Inside were 3 coolers, large ones, and a tablet mounted to the wall showing a blinking red dot over a map of the city. Target, Eastview Elementary, Emily's school. Reyes cursed under her breath. They're still active. Grant pulled out his phone. Get the school locked down now. They found fingerprints on one of the coolers. Evan Rhodes. Confirmed. They also found what looked like altered school rosters. One sheet had names, highlighted in green and red. The green ones had notes: responsive, compliant, possible extraction. Emily's name wasn't on it anymore, but Amari's was. Monday morning came too fast. Eastview Elementary went into lockdown at 7:30 a.m. No one in or out. Local officers swarmed the perimeter. Parents were notified. Most were still asleep when the alert hit their phones. Grant stood beside Principal Warren outside the school. "This is not a drill," he said, "and I need to speak with a student named Amari Taylor immediately." The principal nodded and hurried inside. 5 minutes later, Amari stood nervously in front of Grant, holding her backpack tight. Nova approached her gently, tail wagging, body language calm. "Hi, sweetie," Grant said. "Can I ask you something important?" Amari nodded. "Has anyone ever given you special candy at school? Or maybe pulled you aside and said not to tell anyone?" Amari looked down. "Miss Bennett used to give me pink ones. They tasted weird." Grant's stomach twisted. "Has anyone tried to talk to you since she left?" Amari hesitated. Then, "A man at the bus stop last week, he gave me a sticker with a puppy on it. Said he'd see me soon." Grant's blood ran cold. Reyes walked over. "We've got surveillance outside her house. There's a car that circled her block 3 times this week. They're watching," Grant said. "They're regrouping." Nova barked twice, sharp and focused. She was facing the fence line behind the school. A man stood there. Hoodie, ball cap, same build. Watching. He turned and ran. Grant didn't have to say a word. Nova took off. She cleared the playground gate like it wasn't even there, her paws hitting the grass with precision. The man barely made it to the parking lot before she brought him down hard. By the time Grant reached them, the man was cuffed and bleeding from the mouth. Evan Rhodes. Inside his hoodie pocket was another cooler, and inside that a candy wrapper filled with powder and a tiny transmitter chip. Not just drugs. Tracking devices. They weren't just drugging the kids, they were marking them. 3 weeks after the arrest at Eastview Elementary, the school finally reopened with new rules, tighter security, and a very different tone. Parents now walked there, children inside. Backpacks were checked at the door. A new policy required that any outside vendors, volunteers, or educational guests had to be verified with 2 forms of ID and a school district background check. It was a different place. Emily. Grayson stood in the front hallway beside her mom, holding Nova's leash gently in her small hand. Her classmates whispered as they passed, but not the way they used to. No one avoided her now. They smiled, waved, even asked if they could pet the dog. Officer Grant knelt beside her. "You ready?" Emily looked up at him. "Do I have to talk?" "You don't have to say anything," he said. "You just have to be here, that's enough." The school had invited Emily and Nova back for a special assembly. This time it wasn't career day, it was something different, something heavier. Principal Warren stood on stage in the gym, microphone in hand. "Today," he said, "we welcome back 2 heroes, one with 4 legs, and one who stood up when it mattered most, who spoke when it would have been easier to stay quiet, who noticed when something felt wrong." Emily stood next to Nova on the stage, her hands shaking just slightly. The room fell silent. "You saved lives," the principal said, to her directly, "and you reminded us all that paying attention can be the most powerful act of all." He turned to the crowd. "And you," he said to the teachers and students, "you have a voice. Use it. If something feels off, if someone makes you uncomfortable, Speak. Even if you're wrong, it's better to be safe. Officer Grant stepped up and presented Nova with a new badge. It shimmered under the gym lights. The crowd applauded, and for a moment all the fear and confusion that had hung over the school lifted. Afterward, kids crowded around to pet Nova. She wagged her tail and licked a few cheeks. Emily beamed. At the back of the gym, Leah Grayson wiped her eyes. She wasn't the same woman Grant met in that first interview. There was a light in her now, something proud, something awake. "You okay?" Grant asked. Leah nodded. "Better than okay. I enrolled Emily in art therapy. She started drawing again." Grant smiled. "Good. She has a lot to say." Later that afternoon, Grant returned to the precinct. The investigation into Project Chalkdust was still ongoing. There were new leads in Nevada and Pennsylvania, more teachers under scrutiny, a warehouse in Phoenix being watched. But for now, there was a sense that the tide had turned. Reyes met him in the parking lot. "We got full cooperation from Rhodes," she said. He named 2 of the financial backers, people in tech and private, medicine, high level. "You think it'll stick?" Grant asked. "With federal charges and public pressure," she replied. "They're going down." Grant leaned against his cruiser. "This started with a bark, just one, and that bark saved kids across 3 states, Reyes said. They both looked at Nova, who sat in the shade nearby, licking her paw like the fate of a national operation didn't rest on her shoulders. That night, Grant drove out to a quiet field just outside town. It was Nova's favorite spot. Open grass, no cars, no concrete, just space to run. He unlatched the leash. "Go on, girl." She bounded forward, ears flopping, tongue out, freedom in every step. Grant sat on the hood of the car and watched her. The wind was calm. The sky was open. He thought about Emily. He thought about the list. And he thought about how close they had come to losing something they never should have to protect in the first place. He remembered what Emily had said during one of their quiet moments together. Just 6 words. Nova listened when no one did. That stuck with him. Across town, Emily lay in bed, Nova curled at her feet with a stuffed bear tucked under one paw. She held a small notebook in her hand. The front was decorated, with stars and flowers and a drawing of a girl riding a giant German shepherd. Inside were pages of poems, some sad, some happy, but all true. Before turning off her lamp, she wrote a final line at the bottom of the newest page. "When the world doesn't believe you, believe the dog who barks anyway." Life went on. The school learned, the parents learned, and the kids learned that it was okay to speak up, that being quiet didn't mean being invisible, that sometimes the truth comes in barks and growls and shaking paws, and that heroes don't always wear badges. Sometimes they wear fur. Life lesson for the audience. Sometimes the smallest voice can break the loudest silence. Sometimes a child who whispers is braver than an adult who yells. And sometimes a dog's bark can do what 100 grown-ups ignore. So here's a question for you. If something didn't feel right in your life or your community, would you have the courage to speak up? Even if no one else believed you, because maybe the world needs more people like Emily and more dogs like Nova.